So we are here to deliberate on the topic, developing resilient leadership, key competencies for HR professionals. And of course, it's looking into some of the issues that has already been touched on by our keynote speaker. And so with me to do that this morning, they've already been introduced, and so we'll go straight to the concerns. We'll go straight to the issues. We'll want to know from my panel members what their views are on developing resilient leadership, key competencies for HR professionals. Just what's your understanding? What are your views when we talk about developing resilient leadership, key competencies for HR?
Good morning, and a very big thank you to our keynote speaker. I have to say, I had never heard the name Amazing Grace. If I had heard it, I may have named my daughter that. It's so pretty. Thank you very much. Resilience is a word that I think we have heard about, we have talked about in our organizations, in our personal lives. And really, what does it mean to build a resilient organization? And to my understanding, it is ensuring that you are building teams, you're building an organization that stands the test of time. Now, the test of time can come from economic hardships. It can come from situations like COVID-19, completely unexpected. Amazing Grace talked about the VUCA environment. And so what are you doing as leaders? And I would say it's not just the function of HR, but really, as leadership, what are you doing to ensure that you are building an organization that is built to last? So there's some components to resilience in organizations, and I'll just touch on a few of them because I know that I'm sure my other panel members will touch on others as well. I think for me, a key thing is leadership, and it's a succession. I think somebody mentioned it in the beginning. So how are you building succession in your organization? Is your organization built around one person, a personality, right? For example, the CEO. And if the CEO leaves today, does everything crumble? Or is there a succession plan in place to ensure that if this person leaves, there are certain things that quickly come into place. There's somebody, a successor who is announced, even if it's an interim one, that is announced who can take decisions and who can move the organization forward. So it's leadership. And then it's systems and processes, right? Processes laid down, it could be simple as lay down procedures, policies, HR policies, where if there are situations in the organization, so for example, an employee is experiencing bullying, right? Where do they take that? Immediately they go to HR. There is policies to address that, and you take care of that. And then there are situations as well, too, that test the organization that there's so much you can prepare for. But are you hiring people who have built personal resilience over time, or have you equipped them with the space to be able to think for themselves? Or have you been doing all the thinking such that when there are situations happen in the organization that hasn't happened before, they are found wanting and they can't step up, right? So all of that comes into building resilient organizations. And as HR leaders, I guess, more than most people, have to ensure that the people that we're bringing into our organization, we're giving them the tools needed to be resilient. Health, safety, well-being is a key one as well. And that the organization, when the time comes, when there's a crisis, they're able to step up and meet these challenges.
Thank you. So Dr. Bassay, we'll want to find out what are the core competencies that distinguish resilient HR leaders from their counterparts, and how can HR professionals develop these competencies?
Right. Good morning to everyone. And thank you to the organizers for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this rather all-important subject area. My thoughts had always been that the relevance of leadership, it's problems. In the absence of problems, we don't need leaders. If everything was right, then leadership would be a waste of everybody's time. So appreciation of managers, and in this case we are discussing the people manager, the human resources manager, to understand that your relevance for being there is because there are problems. I tell managers, when you are promoted from a manager to a senior manager, it only means that you are trusted to handle bigger problems, and that is the only reason you will be promoted to a different level. Generally, too many of our managers are training very little or no leadership, and the resultant effect is how our organizations are heavily overmanaged and underled. It's important for HR to appreciate that we are bearers of the CEO's vision. Human resource manager is the bearer of the CEO's vision. Last night I was speaking at an HR event and I shared with them some thought of the late Jack Welch, former CEO of General Electric, who thought that between two football teams, the one that will mostly win the match is the team with the better side of players. How come if France was going to play Ghana, you were setting in your heart that we would lose as Ghanaians and France will win? How did you know that? It's because you are convinced that they had better players. Now, so Jack Welch would ask you whether you would rather hang up with the team accountant or the player personnel manager, the guy who is in charge of filling in the players that would guarantee a win for the organization. So we indeed as HR professionals play a very vital role in the organization. In some jurisdiction, the person who is closest as the deputy CEO is the HR, because once we get a people bit wrong, everything else will not go right. Because I say that running an organization involves just two things: leading people and managing systems. And too many a time, once you get a people leadership bit right, everything else would probably go right. Now, I know how much HRs discuss questions of policies, for instance. We draft beautiful policies, but really do not put any power, any leadership power behind those policies. And I'm always quick to remind managers that people don't follow documented plans. They follow leaders who show leadership in the organization. Anybody here who probably have been my student before have heard me share this story, how I went to facilitate a strategy session for one of the organizations in one of the facilities around the Volta Lake, one of the resorts. Now, the architecture of that hotel is such that you don't drive in, you leave your vehicle out, and you are either carried in by a cart or you're walking on something. We arrived on a Monday evening, if my memory serves me right. The following day, I walked to my car to pick a bottle of wine, and when I attempted stepping back into the hotel, I got flagged down by a security officer. Good evening, sir. Here, they don't allow foreign wine in. Foreign wine as in wine you didn't buy from the hotel. Because of the little leadership orientation I have, I first and foremost was like, they don't. Where do you work? He said, I work here. Okay, so if a person who is a staff of an organization begins to say they don't, that means he's alienated from the vision, from the policy, where the organization thinks is going. And who are they, or who is he referring to as they? Managers, yourselves. The people who sit at the top floors and in your suit and air conditioner rooms and drinking tea, say, I should tell you that they don't allow foreign wine here. Now, the other side, or the second part of our conversation will shock you. He told me, but here's what you can do, sir. You can go back into your vehicle, put the wine in a polythene paper so when you are passing, no one sees you. The person who had been put there to guard the gate just aided me to crash the gate. Apparently because he didn't understand the conventional wisdom behind why the policy existed. He knew there was a policy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stated it to me. Fundamentally, people are conservative and resistant to change. And if they don't understand the reason behind the policy, then they wouldn't go by it at all. They revert to what they think makes sense to them. So what I want to say in conclusion at this stage is that the only time people are truly motivated to act is when they understand the consequences of inaction. There's a documented policy, but nobody engaged him to understand why the policy existed. Probably they also deal in wine, and if they allowed foreign wine, business wouldn't grow. Probably the hotel will be held liable if anybody ate anything poisonous, something. But nobody engaged him. They only gave him a paper or told him that this policy exists and make sure nobody brings a foreign wine in. But he aided me to bring the wine. I was the beneficiary of his directive, so I did everything he asked me to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So you've mentioned leadership, you've mentioned communication, you've mentioned having a vision and a purpose. So, Mr. Diaba, are there any other competencies that you want to add that are required as resilient leaders?
Thank you very much. And of course, thank you for inviting me. With regards to competencies, I like to say that one of the ones that obviously I would say is learnability. We spend a lot of time focusing on what was, when it may not be relevant for today and into the future. How well do we understand the value of, almost cliche, the ability to unlearn, learn, and relearn? I'm biased, obviously. And so that for me is where it starts from. If it's got to do with leadership ability, there are leadership principles that worked yesterday that will not work today. I'll give you an example. The picture or the image of yesterday's leader is the image of the superstar. He or she has all the answers. Everybody looks to him for all the direction. Today, you cannot go that way. That picture today will not be tenable because it is very easy for people to walk away from you if you come up with that picture. What that means is today's leadership requires you to shift from being the one who comes across as knowing all the answers to being the one who knows where to find the answers, whether from within or from your group. So that requires a shift in moving away from what you knew yesterday to today. Now I'll give you two examples that will tell you the next area I'm going to. Country A, I went into the hotel and there was a problem in my room. And I came out and this gentleman who was polishing shoes of guests, and I said to him, I have a problem here. Now, you would expect that he would say, well, you can call reception or something. And he said, I can help you with that. Typically, I said, are you sure? Because in my mind, he polishes shoes. He said, oh, don't worry. Less than 2 minutes later, I got a call in my hotel room on the phone to say, we understand you have XYZ problem. I'm sending somebody over to help you. In this hotel room, there was a small sign on the table that said that our workers are already paid, so they don't need tips. And that was the first time I'd seen that in a hotel, and it struck me. Fast forward, country B. I had a problem with my internet connectivity. I called the reception. They said, okay. Nothing happened. I waited another 10 minutes. I went out looking out for somebody, met a number of the people who I thought were the workers. They said, okay, nothing happened. 30 minutes later, I went to the reception and I said, I called the reception. He said, it wasn't me, but tell me what your problem was. And I said it. every one of the people I spoke to said, oh, we are sorry. Nobody did anything. And then I hit the roof and I said, can I speak to the boss? And then they said, okay, he'll get to you. I said, no, I'm not going. Until I get answers, I'm not leaving the reception. And then somebody walked over to me and said, oh, I'm the head of IT. Now, all the solutions that you were given, don't mind them. Use this particular one. If you have any problems, ask for me. Now, in his mind, he was being very helpful to me. In my mind, I was being very suspicious. Because what it meant for me is, if I'm using the internet at 1 a.m., and he in particular is not there, what happens to me? And yet in his mind, he was giving me the ultimate answer. And so what I think is the next thing to deal with, it's mindset. How do we ensure, starting with us, let's begin with us as the HR leaders, how do we ensure that we have the mindset that allows for quick response, that understands the full picture, that is able to work at the balcony and also descend into the factory floor or on the dance floor and get into the gutters and do what has to be done? So I've given you two there. One is mindset. The other is what I call learnability.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you can do it better. Thank you. So yeah, we all agree that the HR landscape is changing, it's evolving. So how can HR leaders effectively balance traditional HR function with the demands of evolving leadership roles? Hanna, you will want to take that.
So we have to keep abreast with what is happening in our industry. First of all, we have to understand our businesses, our sectors that we work in. Because if you're going to be a strategic business partner and be the advisor to the organization, you have to understand what the organization is about, what the business is about, how it even makes money, what are the things that challenges the organization. And we can't be comfortable in our roles and just identify our roles to, I think what you'd call the traditional, recruiting, onboarding, all of these things. We have to go way past that. And even before people coming to the organization, we have to look at the whole employee life cycle, attract and onboarding, right? How do we even attract people to our organization? What are the unique selling propositions of our organization, the employer value proposition, so that people who are outside, the right talent can be attracted to even apply for roles in your organization. And then when they come in, the whole talent management process. So what are some of the things that are happening now, for example, in recruiting, right? Everybody's talking about AI, everybody's talking about ChatGPT, etc. So if our CEOs come to us and are asking us put together a plan for how we're going to integrate AI into our talent management strategy, or if that question is asked to us at a meeting, are we found wanting, or do we know what it is? We have to understand the speak that is going on. We have to understand the questions, what are the discussions in roundtables, etc., so that we can speak to these things. Now, you don't always get it correct, but you have to learn what is going on. Another thing is, if you look at the employee life cycle, I think one of the most important thing is how you infuse culture, organization culture, into every aspect of the employee life cycle. What do you reward? The behaviors that you're saying is important to you, those are the behaviors that you have to reward. If you're saying that teamwork is important to you, but constantly people see that you're rewarding that person who is always, people are always talking about, that person is like a sole operator, will jump over everybody, will talk badly about everybody to get their stuff done. At the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, if you're doing performance reviews, are you rewarding this person just because they have achieved all of their technical objectives that you set. What about the how, right? The how, which is the culture that you're trying to build. And so if you're doing that, employees are looking at that and see, well, then it doesn't really pay for me to be a team player because I see so and so being rewarded for doing the exact opposite. So we have to ensure that the culture that we are building can be found all through the employee, like saying how we onboard, how we reward, how we performance manage.
Thank you, Hanna. Yeah, we need to stay informed and we need to build the right culture. Okay, Dr. Bassay, you will want to add something to that. How do we balance traditional HR functions with the demands of evolving leadership roles?
Right, as my colleague Hanna had mentioned, learning the business with support for me is a key. When Auntie Joyce was speaking, she mentioned that we like to build a lot of these concepts around academic debates and whatnot. Really, life can be pretty simple. And so I say that the relevance of the HR is to help solve organizational problems. One of the key challenges of HRs today, in my view, is we think too much HR. Think the business and develop, policies, design HR plans to align or solve organizational problems. We don't exist for ourselves. That is how come I wouldn't expect how HR is done in a telco as the same way it will be done in a manufacturing environment, as the same way it will be done in an extractive industry like the gold mining or oil drilling, or even in the bank. And so you understand your environment, and then you build your HR activities to resolve those challenges for the organization. We do not exist for ourselves. We got to make sure. After COVID came and some organizations started doing this remote work and what have you, I engaged an organization, or an organization engaged my services, consulting services. And I asked the HR, how do you do your performance management now that people work remotely or from home? And it's the same system when everybody was coming to the office. We can't manage performance when people are working remotely the same way as we would do if they were sitting in the office. The information we provide in the classroom. You have an MBA in HR. These days, lots of people, maybe not everybody, hide behind MBAs and pretend they're intelligent. The classroom knowledge provides you with a framework. When you get to your environment, ensure that you are able to build systems that respond to that organization's challenges as you meet every day. Once again, I can mention the relevance of leadership is your ability to solve problems.
Yeah, thank you. So, emotional intelligence. We've mentioned, and it's been said, emotional intelligence is key for resilient leadership. I would want to know from you, how can HR develop emotional intelligence? How can we as HR professionals develop emotional intelligence?
Thank you. Just to clarify, you're talking about how HR can develop emotional intelligence in their teams or within themselves?
So within themselves, in the team.
Thank you. It starts with understanding yourself. How many times are you upset and you're speaking with somebody and they ask you, are you upset? And you say, no. But you are upset. So even before we get to emotional intelligence, let's start with emotions. Do you know your emotions? Do you know what your trigger points are? Do you know what upsets you? Do you know, and I'm a Ghanaian, I can talk about the Ghanaian who laughs when they are embarrassed, who rejoices when they are mourning, who smiles when they are angry. All these things can be more like a contradiction of what they show and what's inside. Now, your emotions are not what you do. Combined with your thinking, they influence what you do. And so you start by recognizing what emotions you're having, what makes you get those emotions. And that's number one. Then you move on to understanding how other people are behaving, not by assuming, but by clarifying. And I always like to use the example of the iceberg. We do know that only about 9 to 10% of the iceberg is visible. That 9 to 10% of the visible iceberg reflects what can be seen, how we behave, what we see. The 90 to 91% would reflect a combination of our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, our values, our needs, the met needs and the unmet needs. And here's where it gets interesting. Every single time when we engage with people, we judge them by their worst actions and judge ourselves by our best intentions. Now, if you're an HR, you've got to understand that because people see you as a reflection of whether it's the people processes or the people policies or the procedure in the organization, they are reflecting everything that relates to you. Your conscious behavior they see, but they read beneath that and make their assumptions of what you're thinking and what your emotions are. And those ones are typically unconscious. And so each one of us will have to make time and pay attention to ourselves. The final statement I'll make around that in terms of emotions is this. As a person, whether HR or a leader or all it involves, as a person, be mindful of, or let me put it this way, catch yourself listening to yourself. Catch yourself and catch your thought processes. And you will notice that unless you have done that discipline, more than 60% of your thought processes are negative. And that could impact how you come across. And that's where the value of emotional intelligence is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Self-awareness and self-regulation. Thank you very much, Mr. Diaba. So, prompting me. So we've tried to look into developing resilient leadership key competencies for HR professionals. And we've touched base on culture of the company. We've also heard about emotional intelligence, problem solving, communication, and of course, getting leadership buy-in in the things that we do. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please a huge round of applause. Thank you, Akrong. Please, I'd allow two. This is still a further development of the topic, developing resilient leadership, key competencies for professionals, that Reverend Mrs. Amazing Grace and Diaba had already touched on as a keynote speaker. Based on this, we're having this discussion, so if you still have something from the previous submission you would quickly want to put up your hand. If you have a contribution as well, and that's what the forum is all about. So let's take some hands and I'll bring the microphone to you right away.
I'm Francis, studying accounting at the University of Ghana Business School, and I would like to make reference to our keynote speaker, Dr. Amazing Grace. She touched on the preparations of the HR department or HR in the next 10 years, and I was looking at it this way. The revelation of the world in Christianity and all over has made it clear that if you want to make an impact, a very viable impact, you look at your upcoming generation. So we in the universities are the upcoming generation. We come for internships, and then it's more or less like everybody. The notion in school right now is that internship is all about go and buy kinky and go and buy wachi. But then my internship opportunity I had with Glyco General, it was very nice for me. It changed my whole learning perspective when I came back to school. So I'm saying it this way, since I'm in a room full of those who take a look at our internships or supervise our internships, why not make the internship to the HR student who is coming to intern more attractive for him? Not more or less like go and do photocopies, go and buy wachi, go and buy kinky. Let's get us involved a little bit, even in the underground works. It piques our interest a lot when we go back to school. Yes, thank you very much. And before that, the last semester, I was having a conversation with a friend, and he was saying that, so internships that we are not being paid safe, we are not getting slots. So how much more the job market? So please, if possible, there's slots for interns. Yes, let's look at it, because we come for internship opportunities and we don't get. All right, it's more or less like protocol now. All right.
Please, panelists, would you want to deal with this? If you have any senior members in the front row as well who would love to deal with this, George, over to you and your people if you want to deal with this. But maybe we should take a last question. As soon as the gentleman started talking, I heard somebody whispering, "Omobo Munyeshi."
Okay. My name is Elaine Hammond, and my question has to do with toxicity in the office, basically organizational culture. How do we as HR handle that? Thank you.
Thank you for making it brief. Oh, you didn't hear that? Please say that again.
Toxicity in the office, basically organizational culture. It's a cultural thing. How do we break it? Thank you.
Okay. So, Hanna, you take All right, thank you. I think the first question has to do with interns in the office, and how can we improve or make their stay better? How can it be more challenging? Yeah. Challenging works as for
and finally, he said something about it's now protocol. They go for internships and they don't get it, and it seems to be a protocol order that admits people as well. So that's the final bit.
And other things.
Yeah. I mean, when I hear things like that, it really breaks my heart, because that's not what an internship is supposed to be. What we can do as HR leaders, as HR managers, as people who are hiring interns into our organization, for me, you have to know what the intern is coming to do in the first place, which is why I always challenge my HR business partners. The manager who's requesting an intern, they have to submit a form indicating this is what the person is coming to do. This is why I need an intern. This is the projects that they're going to work on. Or sometimes we have a project that is going on, and then we want 5, 10 interns to come and work on it. So there is an already identified objective why you're coming into the organization. And so you're not coming and then, for us to use you as somebody to buy tea, make tea, etc. That's not acceptable at all. And if you find yourself in that situation, I'm begging you, please try and find another internship. I know it's not easy, but try the best you can not to let your whole 3 months, or if it's a year, be about that, because you leave not really having done anything. What was the second part of this question? The second part was about, protocol. Again, I think I have to speak personally to my organization, Vodafone, and I have to say that that's not what we do. We partner very closely with a lot of the universities. We're on campus during career days. We have this program with the University of Science and Technology, Ghana Telecom University, the University of Ghana, etc., the Female Engineering Scholarship Program. And it's really a pipeline that feeds into our diversity program. And this is where we hire female engineers. We go in their 3rd year, we give them scholarships, and then we give them internship opportunities. We partner them with mentors in our organizations. And it has nothing to do with who you know, because we have partnered with the institutions, the directors in the engineering facilities, and they, alongside us, have to determine who gets these slots. And so it has nothing to do with that. But I do recognize that there is, that part of it where you are denied internships because somebody else has gotten the slots because they know somebody. We have to break the cycle of that. There is, I think I saw a post on Facebook where somebody was saying they attended a graduation ceremony and there were 4,000 graduates who, 4,000 people who graduated. How many of these are going to be employed? And that's just one institution, right? How ready are we and how many can each organization take? And is that really the only path, right? What are the other paths? How are we preparing our graduates not just to enter the workforce, but to do other things as well? Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you. Yes. So to add to that, yes, it is important that as companies we define what we want, for interns. And I will always ask heads of departments and units to tell us or give a detailed schedule of what the person is coming to do. It is important to establish that. But as an intern, you go through orientation, you are taught what to do and what not to do. If you allow yourself to be sent for the wachi trips and errands, then somebody will say it's waru, wara. We don't expect that to happen. But most of the time as interns, we are also willing to run those errands because we get some of the goodies.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking to the question on toxicity in the workplace. I think Hanna said something earlier on about the behaviors we reward. It is not so much what is on paper that we say these are the values that this organization stands for. It is the unwritten rewards for some behaviors. If you find as HR that you are not open to listen to people's issues and understand the why of those issues, they would increase the grapevine. They would find a channel to share the information. If you are in the space as HR where you are very much into what I call the beauty pageant, you know what I mean by the beauty pageant, where you are more particular about looking good as an organization, and therefore when there are things that go wrong, you paper over them and then make it look like nothing is happening, they will find an outlet. That outlet often is poisonous. And so dealing with toxicity in the workplace, whatever that toxicity represents, will require you being able to create opportunities where people can share their thoughts, their frustrations. Number two, I encourage all of us as HR people to give our offices a break and join our colleagues in the working space. They don't do the formal conversations when they come to your office. When you sit next to them in the space, you'd find that with time, they're used to having you around. So they would share their conversations, they'll share their jokes. Initially, they can have a full conversation whilst you're present and you won't even know the conversation is happening because they are very suspicious of you. But with time, they get to ease up because they know you are, quote unquote, one of them. Third thing I would say around toxicity in the workplace is that for every single thing we do, be aware that many times when you go into the EXCO meeting, by the time you come out, somebody out there has heard what happened in the EXCO meeting. And typically, how you respond to some of the questions that will be asked of you would influence how they judge your genuineness. And the extent to which you are genuine will influence the extent to which people can connect with you and share with you what is not often shared in the open space. That way it helps you to engage and reduce or possibly completely eliminate toxicity. So the behaviors you reward, how available you are, and how genuine you are. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please, a huge round of applause for them. I believe it's been an amazing discussion, don't you agree? Yes, thank you for being here and sharing your time with us. We appreciate you more than ever. And George, thank you as well for being an amazing moderator for this segment. Or you can do better for them while they take their seats.